I always forget, I'm sorry. I just get in the game. Okay. Good evening, I'd like to welcome you to the December 26th meeting of the Timberlane Regional School District Budget Committee. I hope we all had a wonderful Christmas day yesterday with family and friends. I would like to thank everybody for being here this evening. Could we please call the roll?
Liz Costa.
Present.
Karen White. Here. Lauren Schlurf. Here. Katie Knudsen. Here. Julie Hammond. Here. Sarah Dulce. Here. Catherine Consalvo.
Here.
Christy O'Clair. Sue Sherman.
Here.
Sabrina Alberg.
She is excused. All right, could we stand for the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have the approval of the minutes for December 16th.
Underneath that, between the two motions, it looks like there's, the end of the sentence isn't finished. On the minutes,
On what page?
the last page. It says Julie states it's more effective to have the BA and superintendent go through the budget period.
So I would say it's to go through the departments, I believe is what was discussed. But can we go back and check that? Thank you, Heather. Do we have a motion on the floor to accept the minutes? Then we can do. the
Motion
rest.
to accept the December 16th minutes as written.
Okay, Sierra,
I'll second.
thank you. Any discussion other than the correction? All those in favor? Eight in favor, any opposed, any abstentions? One abstention. Thank you. Before we start, I may need to step out. I've not been well for the past couple of weeks. So I'm gonna try and get through as much as I can. I've said throughout this process, we need to think of the taxpayer, what they are going through. I understand what we've asked has been difficult, and I thank the superintendent and the business administrator and administration for doing what they could to address what we have asked. We have people who can afford to pay the taxes and they do willingly. We have people who are in foreclosure. We have people who are on fixed incomes who are trying to decide what to do. We have people who are struggling to put clothes on the backs of their children. We have people who can't afford coats for their kids. I just got a phone call tonight that there are people in this district who are living in their cars right now because they can't afford anything. I say that not to hit a red button, but it's the reality of the environment and the economic times that we are in. And I thank everybody again for being here. I did not want to be here, but we are. We are now with the delegates and individuals. I'm going to ask Mr. Sapir to come on up.
Merry Christmas, everybody. Thank you for having me, Madam Chair. First, I'd like to say I was a little bit disappointed last week, nothing personal, but Sue Sherman and I, about 12 years ago, put together the joint meeting between the Budget Committee and the school board for the purpose of having a roundtable and open discussion around the budget. That did not happen last week, and I believe it was an opportunity lost. More heads and all of us working collaboratively together maybe could produce an outcome to some of the struggles that Ms. Costa just spoke to. In addition to that, relative to what you just said, the current school board and budget committee has been blamed from everything from world hunger to global warming. And I understand with a 20% overall inflation rate over the last 20 years, 23% in housing, 57% in, say, things like car insurance, yes, everyone is struggling. But it is your responsibility to fund education and learning and have the compassion to understand and the foresight and the wisdom to understand the long-term gains in short-term expenditures. I have watched this district over a multitude of years throw away tons of revenue because they didn't want to make the upfront investment in things. So it's kind of you can't have it both ways. So relative to that, there was some things said at that joint meeting, like the school board took that $16 million budget and rushed to spend every dime of it. That is blatantly untrue. Not only did we not spend any of that money, but we actually rejected a number of projects which actually increased the surplus. Break it down. The first $4.5 million was revenue. That gets you down to $11.5 million. Then the next $2 million was the lease, which was fully supported, fully by the budget committee and the school board at the time, unanimously recommended, passed by the legislative body. Add that $2 million, that gets you down to $9.5 million. I would ask everyone to go home and people watching the viewing audience, watch the meeting of January 5th, 2023, where they talked about the funded unfilled positions. Everyone knew what that was about. That was another $6 million. That gets you down to roughly $3 million. And this board rejected about $1 million worth of projects, which brings you down to about $2 million. Now, the administration has talked about this at great nauseum, but I thought I'd put a layman's spin on it, being the simple layman that I am.
Mr.
So-
Sapir, I've given you extra time, thank you.
I never run over.
You did.
I thought maybe in the spirit of Christmas, you'd give me an extra 30
I
seconds.
really don't feel well, Jack.
Well, again, your job is to make sure the kids get what they need. Thank you.
Mr. Sherwood?
Thank you very much, all of you. Thank you for the job you do. It's needed and mostly thankless in the best of times, and you're certainly not that. You have some big decisions to make. Your recommendations and vote will generate criticism regardless of how it is you vote this evening. Either they'll say you're afraid of cutting taxes, or you made decisions that took away programming and sports, et cetera, et cetera. BudCon proposed looking at some additional cuts due to this unique situation that we find ourselves in. Some record high inflation coupled with a surge in our tax bills. A little historic perspective, if I could. Just a few years ago, we found ourselves with 4 open contracts. Some of the best teachers in our district were being poached by other schools, and we essentially had 0 candidates for our special education positions, simply because we were not competitive. Our HVAC systems are either all at end of life or were actually failing and requiring us to send kids home. We had leaky roofs, leaky walls, unplayable courts and fields, and we were in the midst of having our 3rd superintendent in 4 years. Now, our fields and courts are playable. They're no longer dangerous or embarrassing for our students. We have an ability to competitively hire new teachers, which we did not have before. We have new roofs and air handling systems in nearly every single school, and we have had 7 successful contract negotiations. Ability to hire greater specialized services personnel as opposed to sending them off, which costs 2 or 3 times more for the district. Despite all of these good things, the communities in general were suffering because of the tax bills, especially Danville and Sandown. The community demanded a greater accountability. The school board passed policies that increase visibility and accountability, increase the process of accountability for RFPs and other proposals. the super went into department after department looking at ways of saving money. And in less than a year, the super did something that no other super has done in the past decade. He came back and presented a budget to the school board and the BudCom that was $2.4 million less than the last voted budget. I did some quick napkin math here, and so that represented about a 2.7% decrease. You add on inflation, conservatively, we'll say that's 3%. This is a 5.7% cut in real purchasing dollars, all without eliminating programs or teaching positions. So I humbly suggest to you that it does not take courage from individuals to come to you and ask for a $2, $4, $10, $20 million cut if they refuse to identify where these cuts should come from. We've all heard these requests and seen them on Facebook. We've heard it's easy to cut an X number of $1 million from the budget, but what I haven't heard from many of these individuals is a justification where those cuts would come from, and because they simply would not be able to justify those cuts. That would take courage. I don't know what cuts will be needed. We'll hear that from the superintendent later this evening. But I would suggest to you that if an additional $2.4 million is removed, you will have to evaluate for yourselves what these costs are and whether it's worth the savings involved. More napkin math coming from Sandown, one of the towns was hit most heavily. A home in Sandown is taxed $10,000 a year. Approximately 70% of that is to fund education. So that $2.4 million decrease would save us more money than other towns, and that's a whopping $14 a month, or approximately 46 cents a day. So though it's not in your purview to do line item cuts, I would suggest to you that when you do see, and you do need to evaluate what these cuts would entail, is it worth the 46 cents a day? And if you, who have had the advantage of having the administration and department heads come and speak to you and present their budgets to you, if no red lights went off in your head saying, hey, there's 100,000, there's 300,000, there's $1 million extra cut, if you
Mr.
couldn't
Sherwood,
find it.
I've given you extra time, just your last thought, please.
My last thought is do the courageous thing. Regardless of how you vote, you're going to face criticism. Vote for what is right, not for tomorrow or for next week's Facebook post, but the implications for 5 years down the road on the students and on your property values and what is best for our community. Thank you for your service. I know it's a thankless job. So I will thank you regardless of where you end up on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Next on the agenda, any administrative report, I'm sorry.
Okay, I'd be happy to deliver that to you, Liz. Couple things to share just with updates specific to the budget that's in front of you. Two updates in particular. One, I'm anticipating that the two CBAs that are still out in front of the school board right now will be brought to the school board meeting on January 2nd for ratification. We seem hopeful that we're going to be able to get there. Wanted to remind the budget committee that those two CBAs are really nominal in number, both monetary wise, because there's not a whole lot of folks that make up. There's a CAF worker CBA we're negotiating with 4 representatives and a custodial CBA that's got a little over 30 representatives there. We should have some more solid numbers for you on the Thursday night at the school board meeting. Also as an update, and you'll see this later tonight, we had an opportunity to engage with the regional director of First Student, that's our transportation company. We were successfully able to renegotiate our current contract and have about $100,000 savings impact for fiscal year 26, more accurately reflecting the services that we've been receiving over the last 2 years. That's step one, and that in exchange with First Student, and I'm hopeful to bring back more at the next meeting of the school board. Looking ahead on the calendar, I want to let this group know that I'm going to be visiting the Board of Selectmen meeting again. We're going to do that after the public hearing on January 16th. So again, one more opportunity to engage transparently with the community members about where the budget is. At that point, we'll have a clear dollar figure, but also engage them in the warrant articles and citizen petitions that are still out there. And lastly, I'd like to share, we're also going to hold 4 public hearings on the tax cap. This is the citizen petition specific to the 2.5% tax cap. We're required to do that by statute. We've set those meetings, and I just wanted to read those dates and locations to the community now. First is on February 11th. It'll take place at 7 p.m. at Danville School. Second is on February 13th. That will be at Atkinson Academy, also at 7 p.m. The third will take place on February 18th. That is also at 7 p.m. That will be at Sandown North. And February 20th will be at the PAC, and that will be representative of the town of Plastow.
Seven PM.
7 PM, all beginnings, correct. And again, the agenda item there will be the citizen petition for the 2.5% tax cap. Two more things, Liz, if I
Yep,
could.
go right ahead.
One is looking ahead, way out, and I'm actually thinking about the fiscal 27 budget, if that rings anyone's brain a little bit. As I look at your organizational meeting will be the first Thursday after the school board's organizational meeting. And the bylaws, and specifically Roman numeral 2, outline your meeting calendar here for the budget committee. I think that, and I'm thinking about you folks making as decision makers and providing you the best opportunity of sequence and meeting calendar to make those decisions. I'm thinking about the taxpayer, including our families, and being able to communicate to them really clearly where the values are in the budget through this process. Thinking about the admin team and the time that we need and are required to necessarily prep thoughtful decisions for you. And I'm also thinking about the school board and their increased partnership next year. I like to suggest, and I'm happy to give some specific suggestions, to look at how we may sequence the calendar for fiscal 27 so that we can have some outcomes so that we're not at this late last minute hour. For all of those 4 groups, they've got vested interest to get to a point that's thoughtful and clear. And I think we can think thoughtfully together between those 4 groups to make some revisions to the sequence and how we're bringing you information. And Liz, if I could close with this, I know there's a couple things to present tonight specific to the reduction. I wanted to make clear 2 things as we do this for you moving forward. The first is, if you decide to do nothing tonight, make 0 reduction, you're still going to deliver a budget to the voters that's 2.6% decrease from the previous voted year. Again, that hasn't happened in this community in a decade. If you're successful and you reach that $2.4 million mark, you're going to bring a budget to voters that is going to be north of 5% of a budget reduction. And you're going to be bringing forth a budget that since fiscal year 16, when it had a 16% increase here, over the next 2 years, you're looking at a negative 1.25% production on the budget. So that is good work as well. So you're at a point where you've got 2 good decisions to make, or maybe a myriad of those between them. You're in a good place to start. You can be in a better fiscal place at the end of this, or anywhere in between. But you're going to deliver something to the community that has not been seen in this community in over a decade.
Thank you. Any reports of the committees, or the budget committee or the school board representative?
None from me.
Thank you. Unfinished business, we're gonna start with, if anybody has any. If not, we're gonna go on the discussion of the budget process. We had our meeting the 16th, and we asked you to originally decrease the budget by 4 million. It went down to 2.4. You and I had a conversation, and you said you would bring something to us. You did. So
All right, thank you for
Here we
recapping
go.
that, Liz. Just to kind of keep you up to speed, that since that meeting and the decision to look for $2.4 million of reduction, our process here has been that we met as a full principal and director group. That's about a team of about 25 to 30 of us. We had that conversation. We then met separately as a central office, smaller leadership team, and we had some conversations. Maria and I, as the business administrator, spent a lot of time talking one-on-one as well. We prompted you folks that we'd get you some recommendations, or at least a list of items to look at by the 24th. We were able to deliver that to you on the 23rd of December. That's what we're here to talk about tonight. So I draw your attention to page 2 that's in your packet now. It is a table that is a very short paragraph atop. You're looking at it right there, Liz, I think. And it's titled Modified Assumptions and Other Areas of Reduction to Absorb the $2.4 million Budget. And I'm going to pause until folks have that in front of them. On that table, there are 18 items, and all of these items are variable pathways to your goal of a $2.4 million budget reduction. These items are itemized in 6 options. However, I want to be really clear that these items are not exclusive to that option. There's more than 6 pathways for you here, because each item can be flexibly moved in the groupings We organize them in large pieces so we can sum your 2-point film total at the bottom, and you can begin to see some of those things that could potentially make up that savings. These 18 items are really going to be categorized for you in 3 areas, and my intent is to walk through each one of them with you tonight to give some further explanation. They may be an assumption that we're making about some expected expenses or revenues. They could be us making some closer alignment to actuals in the past, or they could be principals and directors simply saying they're going to do without something in their schools this year. That's the first kind of bucket. The second bucket they could fall into is capital money for the school district. And the third bucket they could fall into is personnel and staffing, and that's when we really start to begin talking about meeting minimal expectations as defined by the state of New Hampshire. Be really clear with this group tonight, these are not my recommendations to you. These are pathways for you to select from and choose from in order to build a budget number that you want to be able to reach to. Myself, Dr. Martin, and Ms. Allaire are here as the administrative team tonight to help answer any impact statements you would have in terms of what these things would potentially mean. So let's start at the top. You have health insurance, assuming a lower GMR rate. We've talked about this through the process. We have a group of employees whose health plan is running away. We do not know where they're going to go in their plans, and when they make those selections, we are going to be making a less conservative assumption here, and they're going to be moving toward a lower cost plan. And that would reduce the expenses by the dollar amount you see there, close to $350,000. So it's an assumption on our part. Row 2, a decrease in retirement incentive assumption. Again, as we look at our staff and we project out who's going to retire and what that price point is going to be, we're going to be a little less conservative with that expense as well, and that's a reduction of $275,000. Line 3, food service decrease in anticipated expenses. Again, another assumption on behalf of the district administration that we can reduce the budget there by $112,000. Row 4 is transportation savings. That is the exact dollar figure of the renegotiated contract I alluded to earlier in the admin report. That is locked and that is there for you, no matter your decisions tonight. Academic resources. This is close to 50 lines put together by principals and directors about little pieces that they could piece together, totaling somewhere around $144,000, but we broke them up into categories here for you. I can get to a point where I can give you some specific examples, but for this kind of exercise right now, these are things that principals and directors are saying that they can essentially do without, or they're tying more to their actuals over the course of time. Next row is teacher personal day compensation, moving that payout from 1 to a half day. Again, that's us building in a less conservative assumption on our side in terms of what is actually going to get used, and then therefore what that payout will be. So a little bit more risk and a little less conservatism in terms of the budgeting process.
Justin, what is
Yes.
that? Sorry.
Say that again?
What exactly is that? Just that line, like, what does that mean? If you don't take your personal day, you can get paid out.
Yep, and in one of our collective
It's in the
bargaining agreements,
union.
there's an
Okay.
incentive, yes, not to draw
But
from
not,
this.
but then this assumption would be just if some teachers didn't take that and they took all their personal days instead of, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Did not
And-
take that personal.
Correct, and we only, for that, it's difficult for us because that's
'Cause
only
we don't
been in
know.
place for 1 year.
Gotcha.
So we only have 1
From the
year
last
of actuals
contract.
to kind of look at.
Yep.
at that point.
Okay.
District-wide professional development. These are decisions among principals and directors that we can do without some opportunities for our staff, but also looking at some actuals in terms of what has been drawn over the years as well. Academic equipment. These are principals and directors really making decisions about things that their schools can do without. Grounds facility equipment rentals. This is Dr. Martin and her team reorganizing some of our storage and moving those pieces out and saving in there. And that is the first category of assumptions and actuals, and looking at things that we can possibly do without. The next big category there is you see a CIP reduction. This is the capital improvement line in the school district's budget. It was most recently increased $1 million a few years back to continue to push forward some of the facility improvements that is needed across the district. We've outlined a lot of those for you through this process. There is an opportunity here because there is still a lease that we're going to draw, a $2 million piece of revenue that we're going to draw from the lease, but the lease payment next year is not going to be equating to that. So there will be a delta there. There will be some capital money that the school board can have an opportunity to make some decisions what they want to do with that. So I'm bringing that to you here because the impact of you reducing the CIP line is there may be an opportunity for the school board to continue to pick up those projects, just funding it in a different fashion. The rest of this is personnel, and this is where we really get into values and the type of school district you want to have and the minimum standards as required by the state of New Hampshire. Wanted to put some pieces and some items for you to kind of look at what reductions here would mean. One thing we did is we looked at the last 11 positions we've hired. These were positions that were repurposed primarily in special education and student services. So a reduction here would mean taking a backward step of a commitment the district has made to improve services for students and families moving forward. The next two lines, you'll see 16 professional positions and 29 professional positions. Those are numbers that would be reduced across elementary, middle, and high schools. The impact of those, and it would certainly be more pushing to the minimum standards as you increase those reductions, would be an absolute increase in class size at the elementary level and a reduced opportunity for students at the secondary level in terms of electives. The line after that is 43 paraeducator positions. These are all regular education positions. None of them are required by the state of New Hampshire. It doesn't mean that they do not benefit students and that we should be providing them, but they are not required, which is why I'm bringing them before you this evening. They're all human beings in those positions right now. To break those down for you, those are paras in kindergarten rooms, pre-K rooms. They work as interventionists across our schools. They're also in our libraries. We also could move to a minimum standard and have reduced by 8 admin positions at schools. This would put us in a position that I would not comfortably say to you that we'd be able to meet our minimum requirements. And I'm talking minimum requirements around safety reports, around due process afforded to students and staff, around the leadership that we're actually required to provide for our students. But the ratio for admin in the state of New Hampshire is 500 students to 1 admin. It doesn't mean that you should do it, but that's the minimum standard. You could also get to 1 district admin position. You can see that there. And you could also see 3 district admin positions toward the bottom of that. My feedback to you right now is this district has continued to talk about the consequences of not having a full administrative team in place for a series of years. And there is a financial cost to that as well. But again, those are not required positions, which is why I'm bringing them here before you this evening. And again, 5 admin positions at school, just so you can see the differential of breakdown about how you can do less or how you could do more or how you could do nothing at all in those categories. If you see those options, you've got a lot of different pathways to get here. My role, Dr. Martin's role, Ms. Allaire's role tonight is to provide you with as much information you need to make decisions. So we're leaving tonight with a number that we can all start planning toward.
Question, are these positions that you're saying, do they hold a body currently?
They all hold a body.
I guess my question for the CIP reduction, I know that the bathrooms at the high school were a conversation. What is the process of that right now? Have we had it go out for specs or anything yet?
The
So that
CIP list was just approved by the school board at the last board meeting, so we would begin to send out RFPs for those
Okay.
In the new year.
All right, so that could have a little play in there. If we put that back in to the budget, because I think that's something that's important, but the process might be a 2 or a I know you've experienced this before, Dr. Martin, with the changing of the bathrooms and the bringing it up to where it should be, and where it will be a safe environment for our kids.
I'll speak very briefly. We have visited Keene High School and have all of the plans and the specs from their project, along with information about vendors and architects and all of those things. I have not personally experienced that
Okay.
construction project,
All right,
but have done a great deal of research in that area. So we are on our way to an RFP process.
okay,
That's all I can say at this point in time.
all right. So, and with Keene, I just want to have an understanding.
Sure.
With Keene, how long was it you started the process in January, the money was approved in March, and then it was done by September, or was it like a 2-year process?
That was exactly their timeline. It took 8 weeks for the actual demolition and construction of the 12 stall bathroom.
Okay,
They ran into some structural issues that took a little bit longer. What they didn't have to do, which we will have to do because I have the documentation that says we have asbestos in the mastic of our tile.
Yep.
So that is a big unknown about time and expense.
okay. Mrs. Sherman?
Just Christine, I could speak a little bit to that project as well. We're in favor of that project. The CIP was in favor of that. It's not a one and done. It was a multi-year project. It's been in the CIP for a number of years. I mean, getting the specifics down, of course, but it was gonna be 500,000 this first year, and then a couple of more go-rounds to get the entire high school.
Up and going,
Up and-
so that,
How long that first phase will take,
There is.
we don't know because of
Right.
those, right.
Because of those variables. We also, the theory Mr. Vaccarezza and I and the folks in Keene had was that we may not need all of our quote unquote gang bathrooms once we renovate to this style because they are more accessible in many ways.
okay. I just wanna understand, so that we can have because I know that you've gone out and done this, and I know that the CIP has discussed it, and I just wanna make sure there's an understanding of what's involved, because I do think it's something that needs to, I mean, my kids started going there in 2009, and it was bad then.
Mr. Vaccarezza has identified bathrooms in the 200 wing as a place for us to start. And so as soon as I get the green light, we would be working through that.
Okay, Christie?
I just want to echo what Sue said too. I had an opportunity to talk to Mr. Vaccarezza. He went up and saw the Keene bathrooms and he showed me pictures. And I totally support it, but also I think the design of it, people talk about safety. I think also the design about that with it is going to offer our students a little more safer environment in these bathrooms, which I think we could all agree they deserve that. So there's so many benefits to it. So I wanted to share my
Thank
2
you.
cents.
I appreciate
But
that.
I think when it becomes, if we could even make, the plan a little more public, I think it's something, for lack of a better way to say it, something worth getting a little excited about for these students and just what it's gonna offer them as far as, feeling good about entering into the bathroom. So
Okay.
anyway, that's it.
Just to remind the budget committee, that line is approximately budgeted at $1.8 million now. So what you see there in the grid would be the reduction to that number.
Okay, so it's
So you
dropped
would
about,
take out of the 1.8, you're gonna take in that first option line, I'm sorry, Liz.
it's okay, ask.
You take out 1.2 million?
Correct.
But could use 1.2 from the lease for that year.
We've
Better know.
not much left. You'd
No,
leave
I know.
about 600,000 left, which
And maybe $1 million of the
Yeah.
delta between the lease payment and what we're gonna be drawing from the lease. That will be capital money.
So then let me ask, that 1.273 million, that would be the fence. What else would that include? I don't have.
The
the
school
list
board
with
would
me.
make those decisions, but to remind this group what those things were budgeted at,
Mhm.
$500,000 were the bathrooms, $200,000 was the fence on the main campus. $550,000 was the roof at Danville,
Danville,
and six something
For the-
was the
Academy,
Belfry.
Belfry
Belfry,
at the academy.
Okay. And
it would be the school board's decision.
decision,
Should
because
we
it is
decide
a
to cut
bottom
that,
line budget.
Comes back to them to make the decision which of those projects.
Okay. Any other comments, questions, where we'd like, I would personally like to see no positions cut. And I'm stating that if we need to, but that's I would not be a fan of that at all.
I feel like we're in the same position as last year, right? We want to see a lesser budget, but the options that we have presented and where we can, it's an awful situation to be in because exactly what Mark said. Okay, so let's cut 16 positions to save how much money? I mean, what I kept hearing in Mr. Krieger's is the minimum standards. That is not what we want to offer our kids in our
No, it's
communities.
going backwards.
And I'm with everybody. I want to see these taxes go down. I want to see our tax rate go down. But unless we start pulling from contractual obligations, which we can't,
Right. And-
I'm really not supporting any of these cuts, to
I'm
be
not
honest,
either.
for what we're gonna lose in comparison to what we're gonna save.
Feels like it's going backwards.
Yeah.
I don't want to lose positions. I don't want to lose people who are, I don't want to use the people who are in those positions. I don't like the professional days not being, teachers being allowed to have that contractual obligation that they just got being paid out. I'm really scared about the risky stuff of, if everybody takes a lesser health plan, and if they don't retire, and if.
But it does seem like there's things on here that might not be an if.
Like,
The
Transportation.
transportation, the food
Well,
services.
okay,
So maybe we come back with $500,000. I just did quick math, napkin math, as Mark just said. But I mean, I see $1 million. I'm just maybe $1 million right here, which again, is it worth 23 cents? But it's something if we make that less conservative assumption and we look at the food services, the transportation, we know. So there are things that can be taken off. So
And those assumptions are based
On-
more closely on
Yeah.
actual.
correct.
You're dealing with two different assumptions, right? There's assumptions you can look at expenses and are they gonna continue on the trend that you've seen on the actuals over time? Or you're projecting out, again, what that expense or what that revenue is gonna be that year. And I like listening to Ms. Sherman because that is the crux of budgeting. It's all about assumptions and projection. And you've got the historical knowledge that you can look at, that you can produce and that you can analyze. But you're also you're making judgments about what is going to happen, what individuals are gonna pick for health insurance. And be really clear, these are assumptions that we pushed as less conservative as we wanted. So you also have you could have the discussion to not bring it to that exact dollar figure, but to be a little more right? So that's kind of the swing and the balance about how conservative are you gonna be. You could do that as well.
well, if you put the transportation that you just said is off the situation, right? So that's what, 96,000? 96,000. And I mean, Christy and I aren't happy about the CIP stuff, so we'd like that to stay.
Yeah, you
not
can't take
reduced.
that.
Where
That can
I'm-
eventually cost us more money. These are things that
Yeah.
still need to
Yeah,
be done.
it can-
Of
So
course,
as
correct.
inflation
It's
has
cost-
And we're
shown,
kind of where we're
Keep on
at.
certain
It's,
things
because-
you're correct, because we've waited and waited and waited and waited. So what does that make as a reduction if we put the 92,000 and the 1.2 million? How much would we reduce if we left the rest of that option one line in place? Took the risk.
Lisa, could we ask you to be our
Can you
mathematician?
do that, Matt?
Thank you. Let's keep a running tally for these folks, so.
All right, what do you want me to?
I want you,
Yep.
want you to put the 1.273 whatever back in.
Okay,
And I want you to put the 92 back in, and what does that give us as a decrease off the
92.
what's the 92?
92,000, the transportation, we've already saved that,
95,867.
95,
Yeah.
yes,
Oh,
sorry.
okay, so take those both out.
Yep,
Okay, that's 1,030,570.
so Sierra was close, 1,000,003,
1,030,570.
30,000.
You take out the 95,867 and the 1.2.
And I'll repeat
So
what,
in my head, I had also, well, I don't know, the line that I was looking at was the teacher compensation day too.
okay, take that out too,
I don't know, if that's something that's up for discussion, like,
leave that in there, that's another 84, now what are we down to?
So, but the teacher compensation, it doesn't change their contractual
Right.
agreement. They're still gonna be compensated for whatever personal time that they're entitled to, correct? This is an assumption based on what teachers have
done
That's
last
correct.
year,
But
one
once the
year.
pool of
This is a
money
new
is used
thing
up.
altogether. We've never paid out for personal time, so this is our guesstimate on how much teachers are gonna leave on the table that they will get paid out. We have no reference point.
That's a
Alright,
risk.
so,
But
you're
okay.
not taking,
Contract.
you're not taking anything, like, you're not
Right.
taking.
But you take, you
They're not
you
losing
are
out.
though,
They're
not
Karen,
losing it.
if
No, I'm
you're
talking
saying-
about the contractual part of it, because I think that was unclear.
But the district is still responsible.
Yes,
Right.
so
So
that
that's
can't,
everybody, so if you all decide and you go at the half, and
yeah, so that's.
because last year was the only year that we had it for, cause that was the new contract, correct?
so-
For the one, and that was the only year of data that we have.
Yep, I
So
understand,
if
so
you all vote
don't
on
listen to
this,
me, yeah.
and then they all take it and or whatever, and the money's gone,
Yep.
and then you got 4 more teachers, they're like, hey, I want whatever days I have
I should-
left. The district is still contractually obligated to pay.
I just
Then we
don't
have to find that
understand, so
money
I would-
elsewhere.
That's a risk.
So that one should stay. And then one more thing, the grounds and facilities, this $10,000, what exactly was that one again?
I'll try to speak for Dr. Martin. I believe that those are rentals that we're storing some equipment in that we would no longer need as we reorganize our own storage.
That is, we will be working towards that, that is correct. Also, that is an emergency line for things if we have a machine that dies and we need to rent a machine or so forth. So we're just gonna have to figure it out. It's an in-case line.
So what you're saying is if this in case line goes away, something breaks, then we have to find the money elsewhere.
If we cannot relocate our storage needs, and that is correct, but I have a strong feeling we can.
And now I'm just being nitpicky, but this, I mean, like the academic equipment that is spare Chromebooks or like what are we talking? We're talking paper that we don't use anymore, we don't need as much paper
Do you wanna,
because
Sandy, do you wanna talk to
Sure.
that?
the loaners, I don't know.
Okay, for the most part, it says equipment. I believe that's primarily info resources. So those are class materials, primarily K-8. And so online programs that are not required based on the curriculum. They help supplement the curriculum, things like Brain Pop, that are used across multiple content areas, K-8. There are some world language, digital resources that are in there as well. So that would be eliminating those contracts.
Yeah,
And
so
no
that's-
longer providing those to teachers.
Academic equipment, how about academic resources? What's being differentiated? That's like so the resources is 5 lines down and then there's the equipment.
Is it like the tables and?
So we took, again, there were more than 50 individual lines that
Okay.
principals and directors did, and we broke them into categories to give you some.
Okay, I wasn't, okay.
I'm gonna search through kind of those things right now and see if I can report any on specifics for you.
So.
Liz,
Julie?
just had a question,
It's a small line.
on these reductions, all the positions are currently filled positions.
Yes.
What about the ones that aren't filled, that are out there? That you're actively looking to hire for?
Sure, can I talk you through those?
Yeah.
All right, so we have, right now, we're looking for 2 administrative positions, a facilities director and a special education coordinator at the high school, 2 positions that we intend to seek out and fill. At the elementary level, there is 1 teaching position that's open right now that was just recently repurposed for the board, the School of Danville. We have had 0 applicants for that position so far. There's also 2 long-term substitute positions open at the elementary level. So people are in those positions, we just don't have them in our schools right now, moving toward it. There's a middle school physical education position that's open, and we currently intend to fill that. At the high school, there's 1 part-time foreign language position, and again, 3 long-term sub-positions, people that we have employed but are just not in the schools. We have 12 support staff positions open across the district that we're actively seeking. And in the facilities area, we have 5 custodian positions we're looking for and 1 specialized HVAC position that we're looking for.
I thought we had a number of para educator positions that were open requests that were not filled.
open support staff right now that we're looking for. We have 12. We just did a budget line transfer, Julie, that you may be thinking about at the last school board meeting. This moved, I wanna say 43 paraeducator positions into the contracted service line because we're using those salary funds to fund the positions that we're required to hire for the students in the school. We can't hire those positions. It's not that we don't need them or that we're not drawing the funds to pay the people that are in our schools doing those services. I did not bring you any unfilled or open positions without a human being because I don't feel like we have any.
I think, Madam Chair, it's important, if I may, just to remind the committee that the superintendent in his initial budget proposal to the board proposed the elimination of how many open positions?
13 and a half.
So it is not like we have not looked at our staffing and said, what can we bring forward that is a very conservative number of staff while still meeting the obligations of federal law for IDEA and of course the needs of our students. Thank you.
Thank you.
Could I also, I have that information on equipment, if you'd like more specifics.
Thank you.
So across multiple schools, including, I mean, it's most of our schools, elementary, middle, and high school. It includes replacement equipment, cafeteria tables, tables and chairs in the classroom. So it could be furniture that's outdated and holding off a year on replacing anything. It also includes in the music department, if you recall in the music budget, Mr. Schweiss brought forward a plan to acquire fractional size string instruments to provide for elementary families. He would hold off on implementing that program. That would also include holding off on purchasing acoustic and digital keyboards to save on maintenance, which was a plan that he had put in place as well. So all of that together includes the sum total of the equipment that you're seeing. And then the resources, to your point earlier, are those instructional resources, yep.
Any other questions, concerns, comments? So my question to this committee is, where would you like to take this?
Thanks.
Sue?
I know I missed a few meetings, but I have kept up. And my heart is not happy about making any reductions with the budget that we heard presented to us.
I understand.
I thought that was, I thought the presenters were well thought through, well said. I thought Justin had done a great job. I think his comments about that he is giving you the original budget that was already less than last year's budget. I'm not happy. I personally, I cannot vote for these cuts. I won't vote yes.
I think I'm just stuck at some of the smaller stuff if we're trying to meet in the middle somewhere and meet in the middle of stuff that we've already met in the middle for. I know that we're all like nitpicking things, but there's some things that but then I don't know if it's even worth it. The transportation stuff, like there's a few, I don't like any of the position stuff, so I'm not looking at any of that, but just from option one, or actually it's option 1, 2, like some of the first few lines are those things that we could take off.
So maybe option 2 or 3 minus
Yes.
the positions.
Correct. Like I'm
So
looking,
you're looking at 1.4.
I'm looking at $1.35 million.
You're splitting the difference, making some conservative assumptions, and then holding on to positions, and then, you're getting closer to.
So it's basically option 1 minus the CIP line and minus the teacher personal day compensation line. But that's why I wanted to know about what academic resources. Can they go without some online stuff? Yes. Does that hurt my heart that they're getting rid of music instruments? Yes. But can that also wait a year? Probably yes. I don't know. Ugh. But if that's where we need to do a compromise.
Yeah, so I wanted to comment on like first three, if they're conservative numbers, I mean, I would be inclined to make those cuts. Because they're guesstimates, and I think things are trending downward. And I think these would be some things to strongly consider. Academic resources and academic equipment, if the people have done the work to really dig down deeper of what is a need versus a want, I think those are lines that we should consider if they were put forth to us to take them out. The position stuff, I don't want to see cut either. But I think the top items are things where there's flexibility to make some cuts.
Okay,
I agree with that, Lauren.
Julie?
I just had another question for Justin. Is there, the way you guys do your position requests on the open positions, is there a way to keep the position rec open without having to have the monies set aside? I'm looking at the positions that aren't filled right now, and I'm just thinking, if you cut, half of those and you just have your funding bucket, whichever ones you fill first are the ones that are gonna get filled, the others will have to wait till the next year. Is that something that could be done the way you guys have things set up, or?
Julie, I'm not entirely sure I understand your question correctly, but I wanna make sure you get all the information that you need. Are you asking, could this group vote not to fund a position? And could we still advertise for it?
Could you have the open requests for the positions out there?
Meaning that we have, the
Meaning
school
that they're
district has
out there.
posted a position and we're actively trying to hire
Right,
somebody.
well, depending on how actively, and then the ones that you're filling, you fill till you get to that, whatever, we put $1 million aside for that. Once you fill that, that's all you're filling for the year. Because you're always gonna have people getting hired, people leaving, you're never gonna have 100% staff.
Absolutely.
It's just not gonna happen, so I just
So
don't
what-
know, I just
So
don't know.
what this group could do was could identify a number that you'd want to reduce the salary and benefit line by. It would be reduced, and then it would be the school board's determination to see, with that bucket of money, what positions are they going to fund? And if they can't fund all of them, they will need to make some decisions along those lines. But the position still remains. The school board has the authority
Right, but
to.
can they stay as open positions that you're actively
Sure,
trying to
if by open you
fill?
mean still existing, just not having a funded mechanism for it, yes, that can happen.
Would we not have an issue then when it came to the default budget? For the
That's
budgeting of the following year, once you pull that money out of the regular operating budget and there's no position, when you do the default budget next year, it's not in there. So if you hire that position, that's not funded. There's no money. Because it's based on what your operating budget was the prior year. So if you pull the dollars out, so let's say the facilities director, we pull that, not saying we do that.
Example.
Example. But if you pull and say, nope, I'm not funding the facilities director position, we hire that position, well, that wasn't in the operating budget. We found somewhere else to fund it, but that's not in there.
Right.
What are you gonna do next year for it won't be in the default budget. So if the tax people do not vote for the operating budget, we do a default budget, you got an unfunded position.
Thank you for that clarification.
Yeah,
Lisa.
so it's,
Julie, it's also very similar to any reduction that you make from the operating budget disappears after that year. It doesn't come back.
Yeah.
We'd have to come back here and ask for it to be added back in.
Okay.
okay, so we've discussed budgets, we've discussed where we would like to go. How would we all like to move forward at this point? Does anybody want to make a motion to start to play with some of this, or Oh,
have everything
Someone's
already.
doing math.
An Excel spreadsheet
You
ready
have
to
a
go. You tell me what you want in it and I can tell you what it's gonna cost
So
or savings.
If we leave the reductions in place in the top
Can you
lines.
speak up a little, Karen?
Yeah.
so we can
Sorry.
hear on this
If
side?
we leave the reductions in place outlined in the column, option 1 column
Okay.
for health insurance,
Yep,
the retirement incentive,
yep,
food service.
Yep.
And transportation.
okay, so transportation 95, yep.
If we leave the academic resources as is, right?
So when you say leave is,
Leave that in the column as it is, these reductions, leave that there. Take the teacher personal day compensation
so
off of that column.
so the only thing I'm pulling out so far is the,
Yes.
okay,
Compensation.
is the personal day.
Leave the next 3
Leave the next 3
and then take out the
and
1
let's
point.
talk about the CIP. Is it 1.2? Do we reduce it by half? And leave the money in for half of those things, right? So I know Sue's feelings, I know Christie's feelings, but I mean, are these all projects that need to get done this year? Do we
Can
leave
I
it
ask
all?
a question? How many people have seen the CIP list? Okay, so
Yeah.
the vast majority. So everybody understands how many things are on that list and
Right.
how long things have been on this list and the condition. We've all taken tours. I just want to make sure everybody's clear on that.
Well, and not to add, but also too, there is a warrant article out there to get rid of the $25 million lease. So while we are optimistic that hopefully that fails and we would still have that money to be able to continue to fix our schools, there's a good chance we might not have that. So again, if you take out this line from CIP and the voters vote on it, it's gone.
I feel more comfortable getting rid of the first 9 and leaving the CIP. Because those are,
But not the
you know,
teacher personal day thing.
I'm fine with getting rid of that too.
Okay.
It's a conservative assumption. Hopefully it works out. Sometimes we
Okay.
take some risks. There we go. Get rid of the first 9.
Alright,
We're
first 9.
halfway there. And we're at like 1.2. Over getting rid of the CIP. If we continue to put these things off, we're gonna continue to have our schools deteriorate. We're gonna I wouldn't move to this town if the schools were falling apart. I'm sorry. Like, that's gonna decrease our, tax revenue as it is, if we're decreasing the amount of people interested in it. It's gotta invest in the facilities as well.
Lisa, can we just start from where Karen was at?
Yeah,
What
so-
number are we at with what Karen was at?
Yeah, so leaving, just putting the CIP back in, right?
Back in, you mean, okay, so in the
not cut
reduction
it.
of 2.4, pull out the CIP and what else
And
am I
we were
pulling
talking
out?
about pulling out the teacher personal.
Okay, to
day
84,
compensation.
yep,
Yes.
that's at $1,041,942
Of reduction.
of reduction.
Sorry, can you repeat that number?
$1,041,942 reduction, pulling out the 2 lines for the CIP reduction and the changing of the compensation for the teacher personal day of $84,495. So that would give us a reduction of $1,041,942.
Question, the decrease in retirement incentive assumption, is that just the TTA or who else is that?
It's looking across the broad spectrum of our staff and projecting out.
Okay,
So,
but if they all took it, then we're still obligated to pay out.
We'd still be obligated.
Health insurance, assuming the lower GMR, we have an option, a plan for one of them that's going away. We have a plan that's going away. We just gave another plan that's an option. We still don't know which one they're gonna take, right? If they all take the higher option, would we supersede this $346,000?
We would, and we'd be obligated to find it someplace.
Okay. So yes, you can make the cuts, but if we're still by law in the CBAs, we'll have to find the money elsewhere.
Right, and then that's when the school board has to make some really hard decisions about CIP projects because they've got to make sure the retirement and the health costs, et cetera, get taken care of. They have we got contractual obligations and operating costs. And those once you start taking risk on the contractual obligations, I think it's very, very risky.
It's less conservative than what we brought forward for you
Right,
initially.
less conservative, yes.
I would definitely leave the health insurance alone because we don't know what they're gonna pick. But I am with Sue, I'm not for any of these cuts because it's gonna hurt more than it's gonna do good. So if you're looking to cut, I would definitely stay away from the insurance because we don't know which plan they're gonna pick. And I would stay away from the teacher personal day compensation because we are obligated, if all of them pick it, we have to pay out. And we'll have to pull the money elsewhere.
Lisa, what's the number if you put the health insurance back on the line?
All right, so just basically, so health
Now-
insurance, so basically just pull out the 95, the 360, 346, the 95, and the 1.2. That's a reduction of,
No, it was 346.80, the 84,
oh, okay,
and the 1.2.
okay. All right, so that's a reduction of 695,777. So that's putting back in the budget the health insurance, putting back in the budget the teacher personal day, and putting back in the budget the CIP. So that will be getting rid of everything, or cutting the rest would be a savings of 695,777.
And Justin, you said for this first line, the health insurance, this is more conservative, so is there money still, like, you're still assuming that those teachers are picking, but you're just assuming now with this line, how you put this money, that they're picking a different plan? Like, there's three.
So yes, so yes and no.
Okay.
There is a group of our staff that are no longer gonna have the plan
That
that they
have that
currently have
plan.
available. They need to make a selection.
And they still
Now,
have-
what does that selection look like? It could be no health insurance.
Correct.
Because something has changed.
Status, whatever,
It
yeah.
could be their family dynamics have changed. They're gonna move from a single to a double, but they also need to change plans.
Right.
And they need to opt into a plan
Yep.
that has about a 3% differential in terms of the rate, which will
Okay.
have a percent differential on the cost. This is us being less conservative and doing a little finger crossing and hoping that people are either opting out of those coverages because they got great healthcare in other families, or opting for the lower percentage plan, or changing some family dynamics and their kids are growing out of the house and they're not on a family plan anymore. So a lot of different variables to consider there.
When do they choose that? Like, at what point would you kind of have an idea?
Uh,
Beginning of the budget?
After the budget.
No, I know, but is it
Catherine,
in October?
open enrollment doesn't happen till May.
May, okay, I
It's
don't,
May
no, October
through
first, May, I think
September.
you mentioned it last time, sorry.
Trust me, it's bad timing.
So what did you say, 600 and what?
695,777, and that's pulling the three things off: health insurance, teacher personal day, and CIP.
So we've gone from 2.4 million down to 650,
695,
695.
so, yes.
What will we lose out in personal development, professional development, district-wide professional development? It's like $70,000, what would that?
So I'll let Sandy speak to some of that, but generally speaking, some of that is tied to some contractual obligations that we have. But looking at the actuals of what people have actually put in for, and we've got good data for that, we feel like we can be more conservative there, but that's not the whole bundle that's in there as well. There's some other things that speak to it.
This is a sum total that reflects a lot of really small incremental amounts. So I'll list a few of them. Some of them would be at the high school level. Advanced placement courses, we require teachers who deliver those courses to be trained through the College Board. We pay for those trainings and the travel associated with it. We would be cutting that. So that would limit us on how many teachers would be able to offer advanced placement if they haven't been trained yet. Other things are our social services, social emotional learning, professional development. We had budgeted for some of that. That would be eliminating those trainings for next year. It would be reducing PD lines for district professional development days where we might bring in contracted services. So it would be on us, which we do a lot of our in-house development for PD anyway. But it would be cutting roughly by 50% the amount that we spend on district professional development days for a teacher, paraeducator, administrative trainings, and things like that. to stay up to date on current methods, approaches, state mandated trainings, all of those things are in that.
So what happens when I teach AP psychology and now I leave Timberlane and I go teach somewhere else? No
We
one's
no
gonna teach
longer-
that
well,
class anymore because they can't because you can't now send someone
Correct.
to get trained.
Correct, or we would have to look elsewhere we've been having these conversations that if it's a need and it's a value that we have and we want to be able to offer, we have 75 students who signed up for, I don't think we're gonna have 75 students for AP Psych, however, we could have 25. And if it's a value that we have, then we look to find those monies elsewhere, or the cost goes on the teacher, which is not something we've done in the past if it's something we're asking them to do, so.
How many teachers a year do you need to train for that?
It varies.
It varies?
Sometimes it's 2, sometimes it's 1, sometimes it's none. There have been years where we've had 5.
Oh my God, I don't know why everything is, that was weird.
And those are week-long,
So
they're week-long trainings. They're typically out of state. They're offered through the College Board. They typically partner with
Jersey.
universities and colleges around New England. And it depends on, the College Board determines the schedule and when and where those are offered. But again, they're out of state. We typically pay for the registration and the cost to stay on site. Typically, the teachers stay in the dorms at the colleges and universities. It's the program that they prepare for them. If the teacher wants to opt into any certification beyond the bare minimum, that cost is already on them. We don't pay for anything beyond the basic certification.
So it's like $3,000 per course?
It
or-
could be, it ranges, yeah, so if it is something within driving distance, God bless you. We have had trainings down in Norwood, Massachusetts, sometimes they go to St. Johnsbury. Sometimes in Maine, there are universities. There are other times where the only university that might be offering something specialized could be down in DC. So it really, it ranges, so it could go anywhere from, 1,000 all the way up to, it could be 3,000 to 4,000 per training, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
If we reduce this line, is it gonna hinder any of the safety training?
At this point, I don't believe so, because those are state mandated, so those would be prioritized over some other more optional trainings. We've been doing a lot of work in our strategic plan around multi-tiered systems of support, around universal design for learning. Those are the types of trainings that we would have to cut back on. It would slow our progress in some of those areas and priorities that we've identified through the strategic plan, through school board goals, and through our superintendent's goals. So.
Thank you, Sandy.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy.
Yes, sir. Okay, so I think we've heard almost every which way. I would, just so that we're able to offer the AP courses, had maybe put $15,000 back into the training, just so that we can keep those AP courses going.
Well, remember, we don't spend the money, it'll be the school board's decision whether they
Correct,
decide
but
to
I'm
fund it.
saying
It's just a lower amount.
is, and it's just like whatever decision we make, we can say, let's not do anything, and it's still up to the school board to decide how that money's gonna be spent. So, we can have all of these conversations, but it's still up to everybody, everybody who sits around this table that's a school board member. But I think that we need to continue to offer the AP, just because it benefits students. It's a large benefit to the student. So I guess that's where I would like to see some.
So you wanna leave 15,000 in that line?
No, I would take, yeah, yeah.
You
This
wanna
is where I
basically
struggled
reduce
last
it from
year.
70, you wanna move it from 91,000 down to 76.
Yes, thank
roughly
you,
speaking.
thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
So now we're at 650 or so.
You tell me which lines.
No, I'm just-
Because the scenarios are changing, you tell me what
The
you
amount of
want.
wiggle room they had
I know, there's-
was only so much.
Right.
But we tasked them with finding
We have.
$2.4 million and we're
Yes.
realizing
We don't
these are
have.
all items that they needed when they presented the budget, just like we went along with. So like,
Right.
I feel like we either want to cut this budget or realizing that maybe we asked them to cut more than we needed to. Going line by line on this.
Right.
If we continue to do that, we're back at the $2.4 million. Like, so it's either let's make a drastic cut and choose one that doesn't involve the CIP, or staff and cut those first 9 lines and call it a day. Or realize that maybe they presented us, budgets that were well thought out.
And would you like
It's
to make a
tough.
motion?
So I'm gonna make a motion to accept the fiscal year 2026 proposed budget of $89,643,003.
That was the,
That's the correct,
that's the budget that
that's our budget from 2 months ago, a month ago, right?
Mhm.
We're gonna verify that.
Okay.
89.
$89,643,003.
$89,643,002.98.
I'll second that motion.
Any other discussion? All those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4. All those opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Abstentions? The vote fails. Because it was 4 to 5.
This one.
Okay, I'm just shaving.
I don't care, just pick a number.
Okay, next, that failed, so next.
Can we look at the lines if we did line 1 with 346,165 with the following lines 275, 213, 112, 24, 96, 867.
What was it?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Transportation.
95.
Yes, sorry about that. Academic resources, 91, 239. Leaving the teacher personal day, the district-wide professional development. If we reduce that, could we say like 50,000
Which one?
for that line? The
District-wide.
District-wide professional development.
It's the one
just
that's
a
like
reduction.
professional. Move it from 70 to what?
50.
50.
And then academic equipment, 40,584. Where does that take us?
The grounds and facilities too?
Yeah, what,
7.
you're changing, okay, so you want what lines do you not want in there? And I know you're changing the 70 down to the 50.
Just the CIP, right?
So basically all but CIP?
Yeah.
Okay, all but CIP
And
and
teacher personal days.
Oh, and teacher personal day,
The
which
thing about
is,
the teacher personal day is, you won't know that until the very end of the school year,
Mhm.
right? It's $95,000. If there happens to be $95,000 somewhere else that didn't get used, you'll just have to pull it out of that. You already know that you didn't use it by the end of the school year anyways. Just take a gamble.
so am I leaving the professional development or not?
Taking that out.
Take a gamble.
Or reducing it to 50. Right. Because it's at 70,000 now.
No, I was talking about the teacher day. Are we doing that or not?
Yeah, reducing it to 50, the professional development.
She's
day.
talking
No,
about the
no,
day.
she's
She's talking
talking
about
about
the
the
days.
days.
There's
There's
two
two things.
things.
So
Conservative
Sorry, that one
assumption,
we're
I'm
leaving.
supporting that was
one we're
probably
leaving,
a
right?
Yeah.
well thought out conservative assumption.
That one we're gonna leave.
Okay, all right, so the only thing that's being pulled is CIP and reducing the 70,000 to 50, is that correct?
That's correct.
That's the only thing, 1,105,587. So basically, the only changes I made was changing the district-wide professional development, reducing the budget to 50,000 instead of the 70,000, and taking out CIP, is that correct?
Okay. And then we also, were there some people who wanted to keep the teacher personal day compensation from
I
one?
don't care that passionately about it. I was just making a point. If people are so passionate about cutting the budget, I mean, take some of these recommendations. I'm good leaving it there and not having to worry that we have to come up with $95,000 at the end of the year.
Okay, so what's the lucky number again?
Okay, again, I'll reiterate, not reducing for CIP, and changing the reduced amount for the district-wide professional development from $70,850 to $50,000. That would then reduce the budget an additional $1,105,587.
First of all, I'm sorry, may I?
Yep.
I apologize, I had a brief. I am not in support for any of these, and I think I raised my hand for the wrong one because I got disconnected. So I think our count is probably 5-5.
So it's still.
I know it's still tied,
Well, you
but
can rescind, I mean, we didn't vote to reconstruct reconsideration, did we?
I didn't think we had to when we were here.
So if you want to make the motion again to accept, who started that, Sierra?
I did.
Started that motion? The motion.
Sorry.
Can you make me read the numbers
But-
again?
Yeah.
I make a motion to accept the fiscal year 2026 proposed budget of $89,643,003.
I'm gonna second it again.
it's like deja vu.
Yeah.
All those in
that we
favor?
just came up with
I'm sorry.
items.
4?
We're still at 4?
We're still at 4?
I mean, I thought we were having more discussion. I don't, why do we make them go back and cut all this money if we're all gonna agree to this budget right now? Everybody besides Katie said cut the budget. So I feel like we just wasted their time the week before Christmas if half
Oh,
of
I
us are
don't think you
voting for it.
wasted your time, Catherine.
Well, I
but-
think we
mean, I
needed
think we
to
kinda
see what
did.
was gonna be on this
I think we
list.
knew
Hold
that,
up, you've got
because
a
they
motion
presented
and a
them.
second and a vote.
Yeah.
I know, I was doing the
That's-
discussion part here, sorry.
So we
You
have the
rushed
motion,
past that.
and then we can have the discussion after the seconds. But we had done that, we had taken the vote, but you are correct. But we had made the motion at the meeting on the 16th. So that's why they came back and did all of this, and we're here tonight. So,
So we had a second, so let's
we have a
finish this
second,
vote.
take the vote. All those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The motion, all those opposed? Okay, it passes, I guess, the budget. I wish us all good luck at the deliberative session. Any other information that we need to do?
Just want to be able to ask Heather or maybe Lisa if we could read that number again, just so we're all crystal clear what it was. I believe the chair is telling us that the vote passed 5-4. So I just want to be sure that we're communicating and we're all on the same page about that number, because there's been lots of good discussion.
The amount that we'll be bringing to vote is $89,643,002.98.
Thank you.
That is the amount that will be on the ballot.
Can I adjourn the meeting? And I wish us all good luck at deliberative.